What's the difference between the Rider Waite Smith Tarot deck and the Thoth Tarot deck? So this video is for anyone with a beginner level of understanding of tarot or a good amount of comfort with the Rider Waite Smith deck that wants to start exploring the Thoth deck. I'm going to cover the major differences you should know before going from this to this. I'm not going to cover all the juicy details as this deck is a lifelong study and I have an entire curriculum devoted to it, but I will cover the main things that will help you on your journey so you can start slinging some Thoth cards. Let's get started. So first of all, this is a general thematic thing, but the Thoth Tarot deck is very sexy. And when I say sexy, I don't mean like it's attractive. I mean, it is. I mean, it's literally about sex. Not just physical sex, but the sex of the universe as this divine dance between innumerable forces coming together to create you in this moment. It's the dance between this video speaking to you and your thoughts speaking to your body and everything coming together to create reality. Yes, it's very ontological, it's very heady, it's very profound, and right off the bat on the Fool card, we already get that sense because in the Fool of the Rider Waite Smith deck, this is a youth opening up to possibility with the risk of stepping over the cliff into manifestation. But in the Thoth deck, we're looking at this hermaphroditic figure with the sun shining where the sun doesn't shine. So what's that about? Aleister Crowley was really influenced by a lot of this solar phallic mythos culture. And the general idea is that he perceived the sun to be a symbol, at least, of the phallus. And it kind of makes sense because the sun is this force that goes into the earth and essentially fertilizes the earth with its energy, and the energy goes into plants through photosynthesis and feeds the life of all the ecosystems. In a way, the Thoth deck is saying right off the bat, hey, we're going to explore this divine lovemaking which is creating life on earth. All right, we're going to go through all the major card differences. We're going to talk about the core cards, and we're going to talk about how you can use your Rider Waite Smith knowledge to apply it to the Thoth deck and have fun. So the next card that has a major difference is the Hierophant. We notice some common papal Christian iconography in the Rider Waite Smith deck, which makes sense because Arthur Edward Waite, who directed Pamela Colman Smith in the painting of this deck, he himself was a Christian mystic. Now we know that Aleister Crowley was not a Christian mystic. Maybe in some ways he was the farthest from it, but you actually might be surprised that some of his work is actually very similar to the writings of some other Christian mystics. Anyway, in the Hierophant card of the Thoth deck, we don't see this Pope with subservient supplicants or whatever. We see Horus. And Horus is this baby, this child in the pentagram, and above him is Osiris, and under him is Isis. So the general theme of this card is that it is the coming of the new aeon. That's Crowley's whole shtick. The idea that this new aeon that we are entering in since 1904 is ruled by Horus instead of Osiris, which ruled before him, and Isis, which ruled before him. So the Hierophant card shows these three members coming together to usher in Horus's rule. The next major difference is strength and lust. And I'm going to give you a quick solve for this without getting too crazy into thelemic imagery and texts. So in the Rider Waite Smith deck, we're looking at strength. We're looking at the idea of controlling the animal passions. This is a very Renaissance-inspired thing, you know, control your passions, get your embarrassingly shameful sexual urges under control and sit down, right? But in the Thoth deck, we're accomplishing a similar goal, but in an opposite method. So whereas Rider Waite Smith is control through inhibition, the Thoth deck is then control through uninhibition. It's letting your sexual power go, which is also your magical power, which is also your creative power. In a weird way, it accomplishes the same goal because both of these cards are about harnessing your energy and harnessing your prana, your chi, whatever you want to call it. But in the Thoth deck, it's expressive and it's release that accomplishes that goal. So you'll notice that in the Thoth deck, we have this woman who is called Babylon riding what's called the beast. This is an expression of, the beast is an expression of Crowley with his 7 faces, which are 7 aspects of Aleister Crowley, with his Scarlet Woman, Babylon, which is a terrestrial expression of space itself. It's an earthly expression of all possibility. So Babylon becomes this mythological figure who expresses divine whoredom. And the divine whoredom is the ability of the universe to say yes to everything. It's the ability of the universe to run every possible scenario until there's this moment when you are watching this crazy YouTuber right now talking about this anthropomorphization of the universe. How cool is that? So the next major difference we have is justice. Now you might notice that the justice number on the Rider Waite Smith is different than the number on the Thoth Deck card. I'm going to save the reason for that till later for when we get to the star card. The biggest difference here is that justice in the Rider Waite Smith is all about human justice, human causality, law and cause and effect of the human experience. However, in the Thoth Deck, the adjustment card is about the law that pervades the cosmos and the universe. That is why it's not called justice, because the universe doesn't care about what is just, only that everything is exact. Every action has a perfect reaction, and so in that way, the universe itself is in this constant state of adjusting to have everything perfectly counter-checked in balance. Every cause, every effect, every up, every down. This perfection of balance is really big. In the Thoth Deck, we have a figure called the Harlequin, and she's kind of like this circus performer that is an anthropomorphization of the thrilling and impressive yet perfect balance of the universe to perform itself to itself in the phantom show of time and space. So next up we have Temperance and we have Art. So staying true to Crowley's vibe, Crowley looks at Temperance and says, no, we're not going to temper anything, we're not going to modify or control, we're going to release, we're going to go into alchemical art. So Temperance is one of the virtues that is expressed in the Rider Waite Smith deck. In the Thoth Deck, we're looking at art. Now, what art are we actually looking at here? This might be compared to the Great Work. So in this card, there is a subtle secret of bringing together a number of celestial intelligences and integrating them in an effort to essentially realize that you are the universe in what one might consider enlightenment or the Great Work or high magic. And this card expresses that to some degree. Whereas this card is about modifying the energies and the diversities of experiences within your own self to help propel you forward and connect to your higher self or your holy guardian angel. This card is like balancing the energies of the universe to become it. That's not the only meaning. There's also elements of sex magic and some other things, but yeah, so this is art. So next major difference in the major arcana is the star and the star. They are the same name, but they are very, well, not different, but they are different in scope. In the star card of the Rider Waite Smith, we are looking at the hope and the goal and the direction of somebody that's following their potential in a state of vulnerability, in a state of healing, in a state of self-actualization, which requires a lot of release of the waters of life into the water, balancing water and land, which is a symbol of balancing the spiritual and the material. In the star card, we're looking at things more universally. We're looking at not like the literal sky and where we're setting our sights to metaphorically, but the absolute all possibility of where one can set their sights as consciousness. The star card expresses Nuit, which is a goddess of the Thelemic mythos. She is the first chapter of the Book of the Law, which is the channeled writing that Crowley brought into the world in order to usher in this new aeon that he's all about. I would like to make a point here. The Thoth Deck can be thought of as, well, it's so much, but one way to really briefly summarize it is it's like a cosmic universal expansion of the themes of the Rider Waite Smith deck. So if RWS is about life and human life, Thoth Deck is about universal life. I'd like to now talk a little bit about the switch of justice and strength, or adjustment and lust. So you'll notice that those numbers are different. Originally, justice was number 8 and strength was number 11. However, it was switched in the Rider Waite Smith deck to follow the order of the attributed zodiacal signs. It just fit better in the system, so that was the easy solution. They just switched the two and everything got along. Now, that was all fine and cool, but then something happened with the Book of the Law. So Aleister Crowley channeled the Book of the Law in 1904. The first deity that reached contact with Crowley through his holy guardian angel Aiwass was called Nuit, or Nuit. And Nuit is space itself. It's pure space, pure love, pure potential. And that very goddess is the star card. That's her right there. Look and fly. Now, traditionally, the star card in the tarot is attributed to the Hebrew letter Zadi. And when Crowley channeled the Book of the Law, one of the lines in the Book of the Law was coming from Nuit, who is the star card. She told Crowley, to sum it up, all my letters are all right, but Zadi is not the star. So he scratched his head for a few years, and he didn't really understand how Zadi couldn't be the star, and then it hit him at some moment. He realized that if he changed the Hebrew attribution of the star card with the Emperor card, it will create a loop on the zodiac. It's like if you have a circle and then you twist one side, it creates a loop. But what he learned was that was okay, because that loop that he would create by switching these Hebrew letters would perfectly mirror the original loop that was assigned to tarot before the Rider Waite Smith deck changed justice and strength. So what he did was he returned the justice and strength numbers to their original placements to make a loop or to re-loop that side of the zodiac and balance it out by changing the Hebrew letters of the star and the emperor. In his mind, this balances out the system and is okay. And one of the cool things about Western esotericism, we often look at these systems and say, yeah, that's okay. Another difference that we'll notice is with the Sun card. So in the Sun card of the Waite deck, we have this happy baby on a horse that is moving away from this fenced, walled-off area of 4 daisies and a beautiful sun. So that's cool. You know, some people don't like the naked baby thing. It's like new life, it's spontaneity. But the Sun card of the Thoth deck expresses 2 figures. Now these 2 figures are sort of similar to the earlier Marseille traditions, where you see like kind of this boy and this girl rejoicing, dancing in the sun. But in this card, we're looking at a dual god called Heru Raha. And an aspect of Heru Raha is Horus, which is the ruler of this new aeon that Crowley is expressing in his Thoth deck. Both of these cards still have similar meanings. There's ideas of vitality, liberation, things being made clear, shamelessness, but this card just has a little bit more of a mythological edge to it that is unique to Aleister Crowley and Thelema. So probably one of the biggest differences we find is between Judgment and the Aeon card. So in the Judgment card, like several other of the major arcana of the Waite Smith deck, we are looking at a scene from the Book of Revelation. We're looking at this last judgment. We have the cross of the Knights Templar. We have a lot of Christian stuff going on here, which is totally cool by me, but was not cool by Crowley. So what he did was he changed this card into a mythological expression of his deities. And so what we have here are the 3 main deities that show up in the Book of the Law, which is his channeled writing. We have Nuit, which is the sky goddess above. We have Hadit, which is this center red dot, this point. And then we have Ra-Hoor-Khuit, which is this horse figure right here, whose hand has just crushed a universe. So the idea here is there's infinite space, and then we have the infinite point of view, which in a way is all of us. We are all stars in this infinite space, all, you know, in this divine lovemaking of point and infinitude. And then together, that marriage of the 2 comes together in Horus, which is this vengeful god of vitality and intensity and energy and vigor and all of that, with his dual aspect Harpocrates as this invisible child figure. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a lot of people showing up to the party, and this specific design was Lady Frida Harris's rendering or remix of the Stele of Revealing, which is an Egyptian stele that Crowley connected to his new aeon and the Book of the Law. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the court card system, and that's probably the most different between the 2 systems. So pay attention here. So in the Rider Waite Smith system, we know we have king, we have queen, we have knight, and we have page. And what Waite doesn't express explicitly, but I believe is implicit in this card, is that these 4 offices express the 4 letters of the sacred name of God called the Holy Tetragrammaton. And those 4 Hebrew letters are Yod, He, Vav, He. They also express the 4 elements and a whole lot of other things that have to do with 4. I personally have drawn my own connections from them to the Tetractys and a number of other things in Mystical Ascent and the Great Work, but that's my own thing, and I'll get into that in another video. The main idea you want to know is that the sacred name of God is also a formula of creation, from the emanating, very subtle plane of pure, just ontological being into the physical experience that we have right now. Now, the Waite Smith deck does not express this explicitly and is kind of fine with just being like, okay, we have our typical man, our typical older woman, our typical younger, enthusiastic, reckless child, and then our typical younger, inexperienced, naive child. And though that nuclear family can work for a lot of people, it doesn't really do it for me all the time. So in the Thoth deck, instead of a king, and then a queen, and then a knight, and then a page, we have a knight that starts the system, followed by a queen, and then a prince, and then a princess. What this system does is it expresses the tetragrammaton, it anthropomorphizes this tetragrammaton, this four-letter name of God, and also anthropomorphizes the four levels of creation: emanation, creation, formation, and action. Another way to look at this is like the super subtle world, archetypal world, and then that archetypal world reflecting on itself to exist, and then that reflection conceptualizing itself and identifying itself, and then that identity becoming us in physical bodies doing fun things like watching YouTube videos. Those four stages: knight, queen, prince, and princess. But how do you use this in this? This is going to be a little bit complicated because the truth is these are really not the same system, but I have made a solution for you that you can easily use to take your knowledge of these core cards of the Rider Waite Smith into the Thoth deck. So first of all, a big thing you're going to want to do is use elements to understand these four offices. There's two main ways this is done. The common way people do this is associate the kings with fire, associate the queens with water. And kings are fire because they're dominating and they're controlling and they're ruling. Queens are water because they are reflective and intuitive and emotional, I guess. I don't know. See, I don't really like all these kind of typical attributions, but knights are air because the air is mind and mind is ego, and air is unpredictable and the knights are unpredictable. And pages are earth because they're a little bit more still. They're not out in the world yet. They haven't taken as much action. They're kind of still and kind of studious and kind of just grounded in that for right now. However, the way that I approach the elements of the four offices is like this. I approach the kings as being attributed to air because air and kings are all about the intellect. The king doesn't do stuff, he makes choices. He tells other people what to do. He delegates. That is the element of air because air is the mind. So the king is the mind that is delegating. The queen is water because she is reflecting. She takes energy and reflects it, and in so doing transmutes it, transmits it, and allows people to reflect on themselves and keeps things going. The queens hold the intuition of water to guide her followers and all that good stuff. The knights are fire because the knights are unpredictable. They are in some ways destructive. They have big ambitions. They have big drive, all things that have to do with fire. The pages are earth because, they can't really get out and play too much. They have to study. They have to, stay put while the rest of the family takes risks and makes mistakes, and they too will have their chance to screw up and have a good life. But right now they have to be the student. In the Thoth deck, we have a similar setup. The knights are attributed to fire because they are what start the creative process. The fire in this sense is the spark of creativity, of passion that gets a creative process going. And that's what the knights are. If the knights are on horseback, they are the beginning of the creative process, which must be, by definition of a beginning of something happening, it must be a movement, right? It's the prima mobile. It's the beginning of the universe to start to move for something to happen. The queens are water. They reflect this movement of fire. They are the feminine complement to this masculine fiery movement, and they receive it by this passive, responsive, and intuitive approach to the creative process symbolized by water. Now the princes in this case are air because air is the marriage of fire and water. And when you have the beginning of something which reflects on itself through some otherness, then a concept of itself develops. That self-concept and identity is the air element of the prince. And when you have that self-conceptual identity of air, it allows you to embody physically in the princess. And the princess is the element of earth. But you might say, hey Joe, what does that have to do with the Rider Waite Smith? How can you carry that over? I'm going to show you. The kings of the Rider Waite Smith, which I believe are better suited to air because they are an office of delegation and rule and decision making, are best connected to the princes of the Thoth deck system. The princes are air because they are identifying, conceptual, and are a result of the marriage of their parents. Now, how do we solve this? For me, what I like to do is I like to see the king as a grown-up version of the prince. In the Thoth deck, the prince is the identity that is forming in like a young person, and that identity will direct them and direct their life. In the king, the Rider Waite Smith, this is that person grown up, having followed that identity, having followed that code of ethics and those ideals, which led them into rule, into control, and now their kingdom is an expression of that identity, of everything that they've learned, of everything that's going on in their mind. Their kingdom yields to that ideal. That makes the knights the same, but there's still a bit of a difference. In the Rider Waite Smith, the knight is looking to take action, and there's an impulsive quality to it, whether it's divine impulse or just maybe he's chaotic neutral. There's a recklessness here, but it's not necessarily with wisdom. In the Thoth deck, the knight exhibits this recklessness, but through wisdom. It's like the ability to be so wise that you can be so spontaneous and trust exactly what you're doing. It's like the wisdom of a Zen master. There's a chaotic good quality with the Zen master to be spontaneous and like drop teacups and stuff. I wouldn't be able to explain this really further without going into the Kabbalah, and I go into that more in detail in my Thoth Tarot Mastery course. If you want to really understand this stuff, understand the Tetragrammaton and the Court card system in the Thoth deck, you're going to want to take my Thoth Tarot Mastery course. It's a really large course, and there's lots of stuff to it that crosses various disciplines, from mystical philosophy to healing, personal development, and Western esotericism. But if you're ready for it, let me know. I'll leave a link in the description for more details. But wait, we're not done. We still have a couple more differences I want to show you before crossing over from RWS world into the Thoth world. The Suit of Cups might not seem different at first, but if you really study the card meanings of the Thoth deck, you notice that Crowley's a little bit hard on these cups. The reason why is because in Crowley's world, in his paradigm, we are going into the Aeon of Horus. And the Aeon of Horus is a fiery aeon. That means that all water types get negative minus 10 HP, minus 5 attack power, minus 20 mobility, all those stats go down. So water becomes weaker in this new Aeon of fire. So the way that Crowley deals with this is he kind of looks at the suit of water as the faults and shortcomings of desire. He takes a very Buddhist approach to the Suit of Cups. And he essentially says, you can go and enjoy something, but notice that when you enjoy something, there's always the seeds of disaster. My interpretation of this is like, in the Suit of Cups, it's all about the object of devotion, or the object of your desire to experience pleasure that you're sending your attention to. When you focus on one thing and look at it as better than something else, or more valuable or more important to you, then that's always going to lead to some pain eventually, because that thing is going to change, because the universe is in constant change and motion. And if you make meaning out of something that exists in your life, when that abstraction that you put onto that person, place, or thing that means so much to you starts to dissolve, it's not so easy, you know? All right, a couple more differences. So in the Rider Waite Smith deck, we have the Suit of Pentacles, and in the Thoth deck, we have the Suit of Discs. Crowley explains this in the Book of Thoth, but essentially the Suit of Pentacles, this is about coins, money, and the earth. What this Thoth deck does is it uses the suit symbol of the disc to express any type of body in the universe. The idea is that a disc, at least in Crowley's mind, or maybe in Lady Frida Harris's mind, a disc expresses like the most commonly experienced body. So if we think of like planets and solar systems and galaxies, they're all disc-like. They're revolving, they're moving, they're changing. What this does is it gets us out of the illusion that there is fixed things in the world, like in the Suit of Pentacles. There's like fixed money, which is an abstraction, fixed things. Even bodies aren't fixed in what they are. They are constantly moving and breathing and metabolizing, and cells are being born and dying, and all of these units of matter in this divine change, in this divine vibration, in this divine dance, he represents as a whirling disc. Okay, last major difference is the sevens of the deck. You will find that Crowley's a little bit hard on the sevens in the minor arcana of the Thoth deck. That is because he looks at the sevens as a significant imbalanced departure from the six. The sixes in the minor arcana are very harmonious, and they're the place of the holy guardian angel, which is in magic, it's where we want to get to it. It's a very big goal. So in the seven, when we depart from that, there is this like sense of the individual frantically struggling to kind of figure out the universe. And it's kind of like this lonely, frantic struggle of the ego that opposes the more intuitive and more powerful connection we have to our higher intelligence. That's one way to interpret it, at least. So let me know your thoughts. What are your views on the Rider Waite Smith deck and the Thoth deck? How is that transition for you? If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. And if you're really serious about studying the more esoteric layers of tarot, I would recommend checking out Tarot Mysticism Academy. The curriculum synthesizes some of the highest mysteries of tarot, mystical philosophy, and multiple disciplines of various cultures to offer students an amazing education in the biggest questions we could ever ask. And it's so friggin' fun. I'll see you in the next wormhole. Much love.